All right, so we are looking at the role of the P&C Secretary, and we're going to look at the role, and I'm going to give you the hints and tips as we go through that role. We'll also say that online, on our website, we do have a P&C Secretary's Guide. Now, with our guides, with our publications, please make sure that you are using publications that state updated for the 2019 P&C Constitution. If the booklet, the guide, doesn't have that on it, please recycle it. Don't use that anymore. It's out of date. It must have that written on it. And that is in line with the 2019 P&C Constitution, which most P&Cs have adopted. And if you haven't adopted yet, I would make sure you get onto it very, very, very quickly. So WACSSO, we're the West Australian Council of State School Organisations. And our slogan there, and the car that I drive out to P&C training sessions with, states on the side of the car, and our slogan, partnering with P&Cs to advance public education. It's lovely alliteration, but it's pretty much what we do. That's our job. We help P&Cs out so they can advance public education in their schools and help the kids out, because that's what it's all about. So what are we going to cover tonight? Put it very briefly, we're going to have a look at some characteristics and skills, and things that are requirements of a good P&C secretary. The role of the secretary in terms of meetings, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on most, because that's where the secretary does most of their work. And then the third part there is some other roles. Secretaries do have some other roles apart from the meetings, but most work actually comes from the meetings. So that is why we're going to concentrate on number 2 the most tonight. Questions. All right, so this is an hour-long session. We will have a look at questions at the midpoint, and we'll have a look at questions again at the end. Now, I do say it's an hour-long session. I will try not to go over that mark, but because this is the first time I have done this session, I'm not sure how long it's going to go. I'm usually a pretty good judge of how long sessions go, but we might be a couple of minutes out on either side of it. I will try not to go over time. It's probably a good idea for secretaries to acquaint themselves with the new Constitution website. We do have a couple of websites. We have our normal WACSSO website, waxsowa.edu.au, and then we have a special website dedicated to the new Constitution that has the Constitution on it, has Q&As, around about 150 Q&As about the Constitution. It has flowcharts on there because there are some processes that require flowcharts, and those flowcharts are interactive. So please make sure that you have a look at that website. There is a lot to be learned from that website. With any role with office bearers, your president, your secretary, your treasurer, your vice president, and your executive members as well. It's not about that role, it's about the goal. So your goal is to work together, to help out the school, and basically to help out the kids. That is the main aim of the secretary or any person who is an office bearer of the P&C. It's not about ego. It's not about power. It's not about politics. Sometimes those things come out. It happens. But we always need to go back to the question, what is the best thing for the kids? What is the best outcome for the kids? What are we doing here? And sometimes there are times where we have issues. We need to go back and boil it down to that one question. Is this the best thing for the kids? So it's not about the ego, the power, or the politics. And if someone is in the P&C for those reasons, they really shouldn't be there. Okay, the role of secretary is made up of secret and airy. So it actually comes from the Middle English term, which is a person entrusted with a secret. But that's not what we're actually really about. We're about, the secretaries, we're about transparency. That's what we want, to be transparent, always. Now, there may be times that you have to keep secrets, and those times are to do with employees, because that is legislated. There are privacy laws. So to do with employees, you make sure that information is kept secret. And also some records, for example, your membership records. Now, your P&C members can see basic membership records that is on the register of members, but you will also have a membership form, and that membership form will have a lot more details than you put on your register of members. That membership form is only for office bearer eyes. They're the only people that should see that. But apart from that, everything else that you do as a secretary, you should be incredibly transparent about it. I do say it's the number one rule of running a P&C is making sure that you're transparent. Okay, so characteristics and skills of a good secretary: organized and methodical, following, use of cloud platforms, using your calendar, making sure that you're on time with everything. So if you're organized and methodical, you are going to make a good secretary and your job's going to be a lot easier. Impartial, of course, that basically means you're non-biased. And sometimes that's actually quite difficult because you'll have different relationships with different people within the P&C, but at all times endeavor to be impartial with whatever you do. And the best way to be impartial is to adhere to the Constitution. And if there are difficulties where you're not sure whether you're doing the right thing, you're more than welcome to contact the WACSSO office and we'll have a chat with you. And we will go from previous experience, the historical experience of the P&Cs that we've dealt with over many, many years. Always be impartial. Be assertive. Be persistent. Nagging. It needs to be done sometimes. Maybe it's better put as reminding, but you need to do that. You need to tap people on the shoulder and you need to say, have you done this? Right, I need this done. Can you do this for me? So being persistent, and even and sometimes during the meeting, you need to be assertive and persistent. You'll generally, as a secretary, you will sit next to the president, the chair, and sometimes things are getting away and it's getting out of hand in terms of time or the conversation's digressed. You need to nudge that president. You need to say, we need to get on with this. Let's get on with the agenda here. And you need to be knowledgeable. The Constitution, you don't have to know it off by heart. It's 19 pages. I helped write it and I still don't know it off by heart. So I don't expect anybody to know it off by heart. But have an idea of it. Have it sitting with you. Also, the rules of debate as well. A code of conduct. You should really have a code of conduct for your P&C. So you can find a template for a code of conduct within our P&C handbook. And also have your terms of references for the subcommittee sitting there as well when you're at a meeting so that you can refer to them at any time. So you need that documentation with you, but you also need to have a basic knowledge of that documentation. Great resources from our website. There is a heap of guides and templates on our website as well. So make sure you go on there and have a good look. I always call it handballing, but it's also called delegating. You do have to learn to let go sometimes, and sometimes that's really, really hard. You have to know your members. You have to trust them to do the right thing, and don't be afraid to delegate tasks to people. Sorry, just had a bit of a drop out there. Okay, so instead of actually saying who would like to do a job, you could actually say straight to a person, hey, Brett, can you do that job for us? Would you mind doing that job? So you're asking a person specifically rather than asking a person in general. Know members, know what their strengths, interests, and skills are as well. And you, as I said before, you will know some people better than other people, but attempt to get to know your members. And when you go to actually dish out jobs to people, know their interests and skills, because that will help you determine who is the best person suited for a job. And I do say delegate here because what happens if you don't delegate, guess who ends up with the work? It's usually the secretary. Right, so you need to learn how to delegate. And if you do have good skills at delegating, you're going to go very well in the secretary's role. Trust people, don't micromanage. I was saying this last night in the president's webinar, presidents and the vice president's webinar. Do not micromanage. Give people a job to do, but check in on them. Ask them how they're going. You're not micromanaging, but you're making sure that they're accountable for the job that you've given them. And always, always give them good instructions as well. Okay, so the role of the P&C Secretary, most of the role will be at meetings. So most of the job you're going to do will be at the meetings of the P&C. So just an overview, first of all, in terms of the types of meetings. If you're on last night, I noticed there are some familiar names from last night. You would know this as well, because we did cover this last night in the President's one. So if you are having a general meeting, you will require 7 days notice, an annual general meeting, 7 days notice, and a special general meeting, 7 days notice. Anything with word general meeting in it requires 7 days notice. Right. Executive committee meeting requires 24 hours notice. You may never have an executive committee meeting. Some P&Cs do, and they find them very, very handy, especially before the AGM. Right? And we do recommend that P&Cs do have one before the AGM. There's special reasons for that. But other than that, you may not have them during the year. And then subcommittee meetings. And subcommittee meetings, we recommend 24 hours, but it will depend on what's in the terms of reference for that subcommittee. And a terms of reference is a document that dictates how that subcommittee runs. And if you don't have them for your subcommittees, please go to our website and you'll find numerous templates for terms of reference for subcommittees there. They cover things like uniform uniform subcommittee, canteen subcommittee, fundraising subcommittee. There's a lot of them there, and they're in Word format, so you can just download them and edit them, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But they are the meetings types. You will be a secretary and do the minutes at each one of them, except probably the subcommittee meeting. They will probably have their own secretary, which is great because you don't have to do that job. The slides are taking a little bit longer to load tonight than normal, so please be patient with that. All right, so preparing for your meetings. You will work very, very closely with the president. And I would actually say they're the two roles that work closest together within the P&C and the office bearers. And in that meetings, there are only two of the executive or the office bearers that need to sit together are the president and the secretary. Because the president's running the meeting, the secretary is guiding the president. But these two will work together, the secretary and the president, in putting the agenda together. They'll work out a venue and a time, a start time and a finish time. A venue, generally at the school. Does it have to be at the school? No, but we would certainly encourage and recommend for all P&C's meetings to be at the school, right? Unless you're unable to actually hold it at the school. They'll also monitor the email, any of your communication sources, because you will be getting emails or you have people come up to you and say, I think we should look at this, put this on the agenda. I've got an idea of fundraising, or I've got an idea how we can spend some money of the P&C, right? So you're monitoring those communication sources all the time. Under the new P&C Constitution, you now need to give 7 days notice for financial motions. So if you have a motion to the P&C asking for money to be spent, you cannot raise that at a meeting and pass it at the same meeting. The P&C requires 7 days notice of the intent to spend money. So that notice of financial motion should really go out with a notice of meetings, which is the next point there, which is 7 days before. You have to give 7 days notice for a meeting, then 7 days notice in writing for financial motions at that meeting as well. If it's an executive committee meeting, then it's 48 hours. And with your agenda, when you're putting it together, put detail on it. So the general business side of things, that's part of your agenda. That requires motions. Detail what the motions are. And also make sure that you put a start and finish time. The finish time you'll find is very, very handy in terms of controlling the meeting and how the meetings run and getting the outcomes, getting the business done, because that is the aim. You want to go in, you want to do the business, and then you want to go back to your life. All right? Get in, get it done, get a lot of work done, and then go home. Okay, so preparing for the meetings in terms of the agenda, and you're sending the agenda out. So what should be part of that agenda? I'll just circle this one over here because you might have done it beforehand. Hopefully you have done it beforehand, but minutes of previous meetings. But sometimes you might have an executive committee meeting as well. So those minutes need to go in as well in the agenda sent out. So it's part of the secretary's job to have their mailing list of a membership. And when a meeting is coming up, they send out before the meeting the agenda and the attachments. And the attachments are those minutes, the President's report, Principal's report, Vice President WACSSO liaison report, subcommittee reports, and probably most importantly, the financial report, which is the Treasurer's report. The people need to see the work that they're doing, everything they're doing, that hard work and the funds that they are raising. They need to see that's being taken care of properly by the Treasurer. All right. So all those form your agenda for the meeting. Now, there is no set time limit in sending the agenda out. You can do it the day before if you like. And I know that some P&Cs actually, you rock up to the meeting and the agenda's sitting there ready for you. Now, that's a good idea. You've got to have copies there, but highly recommend sending it out way before the meeting. I would say at least 3 days before the meeting. Now, that's not constitutional. It's not in the Constitution. We don't take that, but I think that's really, really good practice. Right, so preparing yourself before the meeting. So this is like the day of the meeting, the actual day of the meeting. You're going to need membership forms because we want people to join. So we're going to have membership forms there waiting for people to join. They come in, fill out the membership form, they pay their dues, which is usually around about $1, and they fill out the membership form. You tear off the bottom of the membership form, that is their receipt, and you give them the receipt. So within our P&C handbook, which you get every single year, and this year's one is nearly ready, there will be a membership form in there for P&C members. Now, you don't have to use ours. We recommend it, but we do know that P&C sometimes make their own up as well. And if you want to copy ours and put your branding on it, you're more than welcome to do that. Your affiliation fees pay for those things. Have spare agendas, of course. Always have spare agendas and the attachments. You will also need a register of members and record of office holders. I will go through that more in a little bit. You need an attendance sheet, of course. You need a constitution. Now, I would say use reusable copies. I do know that P&Cs in the past have had copies of the Constitution laminated, but the old Constitution was 6 pages, whereas this one's 19 pages. So it's a little bit harder to laminate, but at least multiple copies that you've got a little ring, chrome or a stainless steel ring binder through the top of it so that you can collect those copies up and then you can put them out at the next meeting, saving paper. If someone does require a copy of the Constitution, you're legally obliged to give it to them. Now, you can either direct them to where it is online, on the website, Facebook page, wherever you hold your constitution, or you can give them a hard copy of it. And you also will require a membership float there. So that will be a float of money where you take in membership fees and you might need to give change. Hopefully everybody has the right change, but also have that there as well. I just said I was going to go through the register of members and record of office holders. So there is a copy of this on our website, which you can download and play with however you want, but we do suggest you leaving it like this. So the register of members is a legal document you're required to have, and any member of the P&C who is an actual financial member of the P&C at any point in time can ask to view the register of members. Now you can imagine that throws up privacy concerns. So under law, under legislation, the register of members only requires, well, let's put it this way, not a lot of information. Your membership form is something completely different. That's probably got a lot of information on it. Nobody sees that except the office bearers. But the members of P&C have the right to see this form. So it has on it the date joined, the name of the member, one of either of these. Now, you don't have to fill all three in. Most people will probably choose an email address. All right, it's simple. And a lot of people have burner email addresses as well. And that's fine. Office bearer or executive committee member. Now, that is part of what's called the record of office holders. So if a person is an office bearer or an executive committee member, you need to actually state what position they hold. Right. A lot of people just have general members, so you don't need to actually fill anything in. But if a person is an office bearer and executive committee member, you do need to fill in that that's part of their role. Suspension start date, hopefully you never have to fill that out. Suspension end date and expulsion date, and double, hopefully you never have to fill that out. But they are requirements on that record or that register of members. And that register of members is in fact what's called a living document. So it goes on and on and on and on. So you keep that document. Your personal preparation before the meeting. Other things that you need or require just before that meeting starts. You need your minutes book or access to cloud resources where your minutes are. And some people take a laptop along and they will do their minutes on that as well. Fine. Minutes book can be an archive book, like for an example is the Colin Guard book. And it's quite expensive, but it's a great archive book. And then you can keep or archive the minutes through the ages because the minutes need to be kept what is called in perpetuity, which means forever. So you need to keep your minutes of your meetings forever. So when you take that to the meeting, you've got a record of all the minutes, all the decisions made. You'll also need the agenda and attachments, as we said before, the Constitution, the Code of Conduct, bylaws, if you have any, your P&C. You'll need a timer as well. That's always a good idea. Notebook and other stationery, and that is to take down notes, to take down minutes. And then you'll also need slips of paper to be used in case you actually have a ballot vote. So stationery for that. Not all P&Cs will go to ballot votes. Some P&Cs like to do ballot votes for large sums of money. And of course, if you're having an election, you probably, and a lot of people put their hand up for a role, you might need to do a ballot vote as well. When you're doing that, never do a hands up when you're voting for people to take on roles. It can be demoralised for the person that doesn't win. Always use a ballot vote. Now, tonight, tonight I've mentioned these words, and I'm going to mention them a little bit more down the track. So I'm going to explain what these are. Motions and resolutions. So a motion is a formal idea put before the meeting for the members to vote on. An example, that the P&C hold a rock and roll quiz night on the 24th of April 2020 at the Miami Sports Club. All right, that's a nice motion. It's got a date there. It's got where it's going to be held. It's got who's going to hold it. It's what's the idea, what's the theme for the night. That's written there. When we put that to the meeting, people will vote on it. If we don't have a 50% plus one majority of members approving it, then it's lost. It means that it hasn't been passed. People don't want to do it. But if it is passed, it's called carried. And the point that it's actually carried, it then becomes this, a resolution. So we don't refer to it as a motion anymore. So a motion, once carried, becomes a resolution because the P&C has resolved to do something. It's made its mind up. It's made a decision. It's not a bad idea, as I was explaining last night as well. So if this is the same slide as last night, is that if you are motioning to do events and having resolutions from those motions, that you also have what's called conditional resolutions. An example here is, if we're going to have a quiz night, that we put forward the motion that the P&C has at least 20 volunteers registered to assist with the event by 1st of April for the event to go ahead. So you're saying to the P&C members, you need to be accountable. You need to take action on this. And we can't go ahead with this unless we have the volunteers to do it. You know, somebody said that I sound like I'm dropping out a little bit. If anybody else is having a problem with that, can you please comment so that I can do something with the microphone on this side? It's okay for me. Nathan thinks it's okay. That's all right. Okay. Yeah, all good. All right. No problem. Thank you. All right, so the agenda for your meeting. And before I get on to this, I actually might go to the questions. I don't think there's a lot of questions, but I did say I was going to have a look at them at the halfway mark. And if I scroll up, I can't see any questions. So I'm going to continue. If you do have a question, just type it down and I'll have a look at them at the end. Okay, so the agenda for a meeting, a standard meeting. Now, yours might be a bit bigger than this, but I wouldn't say having it any smaller because these are the required items. You open the meeting, you have a confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting, the business arising from the minutes, correspondence in and out, treasurer's report. Now, that's a separate report to the other reports, and that sort of puts it up on that pedestal. It's really, really important. General business, other business, and your date of next meeting. And then you close your meeting. Let's break that down. All right, so you open your meeting, you have attendance, and you have apologies. So you'll have that attendance sheet. Apologies must be received in writing. So an apology isn't, oh, I've noticed someone's missing tonight, they're an apology. Apology is when it's formally given to you in writing that someone is, a member's not turning up. Now, also at the opening of the meeting, that is a time where the president or the chair of the meeting might say, if you have any business that's not on the agenda that you would like us to have a look at the end of the meeting tonight, please come and see the secretary now. So you might get people who come and see you to actually jot down an agenda item or a discussion item. Then you have your confirmation of minutes from previous meeting, and the proper word for this, or the wording, is that the minutes of the meeting of whatever the name of your P&C is, held on the date at venue, be taken as read and confirmed as true and correct. Now, we're only looking at the accuracy here. We are not looking whether we agree or disagree with the decisions made during that meeting. We're just looking at the accuracy of those minutes. Now, sometimes they may not be accurate and amendments may need to be made to them. And if you need to make an amendment to minutes at that point in time, that amendment needs to be put forward as a motion and worded as a motion, and then you need to vote on it. And if you do vote on it and it's confirmed or it's carried, then at the end of that phrase, you would have with the following amendments and list the amendments so that you are approving them or receiving them as true and correct with the following amendments. And this is all meeting minutes, so not just your general meeting minutes. If you've had executive committee meeting minutes as well, they need to be put down here as well and confirmed as true and correct. And once that happens, the chair in a ceremony signs them off. They're then ratified, and ratified actually really refers to signing off. And then they become confirmed minutes. Up until that stage, they're really only draft minutes. Okay, next. Now, business arising from minutes. What actions have occurred from those specified in the previous minutes? So, who has done what? Who has taken care of actions? Can we be updated on things? Once again, it's not a time to enter into we agree, we don't agree with whatever happened there. There may be some questions here, but please limit the timing on these questions. We're just looking for updates from the previous minutes. Now, these are not in full, because in full, they would actually be reports. And those reports are coming up. So these are just small, minor updates from people who have actions, who need to tell the P&C exactly how things are going. Okay, so after that, and the fourth point here, we have correspondence in and out. Now, correspondence is basically communications from an external party to the P&C, relevant to the core business of the P&C. That's pretty much what it is. So, advertising brochures, junk mail, well, if you want to make that core business of the P&C, that's completely up to your P&C, whether you want to do that or not. So, I wouldn't say that junk mail is core business of the P&C, but people might like to actually lift that down. And I know these days that P&Cs do get a lot of mail, and they do get a lot of junk mail. Of course, anything from WACSSO is not junk mail. Anything from WACSSO needs to be listed in your correspondence in. The secretary will collect all that mail and they'll sort it out. But you also need to have a log of correspondence. And here's an example here of a log of correspondence. And this is also in the Secretary's Guide. So I'm not going to really go through it, but you'll see a copy of it in the Secretary's Guide. So in that guide, you've got a sample log for correspondence in, but there's also one for correspondence out. Now, correspondence out is mail or messages that we are going to send out to an external party to the P&C. And they need to be approved. So when we put correspondence in and out and we put the motion there, we motion that correspondence in be received, all in favour. All right, we'll carry that. We motion that correspondence out be approved, all in favour. We've got a majority, we'll carry that. That's correspondence in and out. So that's the next part of the agenda. If you have and so this is where we're going back to being methodical. If you have a good correspondence log, then that will carry on through the ages. So the next secretary to the P&C will be able to look at all the correspondence that the P&C has conducted or has received. It's a really good way of keeping records. That's our suggestion. It doesn't have to be like that, but it's a good idea to have it in that type of structure. And then we have our other reports. Then we have our treasurer's report. And our treasurer's report is really, really important. It is the most important report for the meeting. And the reason it's the most important report is because it's about the funds of the P&C. And you need to look after the funds of the P&C very, very carefully. And everybody needs to monitor that treasurer's report. Hopefully it goes out days ahead. And when the treasurer's report is questioned, and it's great if people ask questions of the treasurer's report, the treasurer will need to answer those questions. And if everybody's happy with it, then the motion's put forward that the treasurer's report be received. And the same as the other reports as well. The wording there is that these reports, or the president's report, be received. The report of the principal be received. So these are all put down as motions, separate motions. In the back of the Secretary's Guide, the P&C Secretary's Guide that I mentioned at the beginning, there is the agenda for the meeting, a sample minutes, and you'll see how these are written, portrayed, and worded. Never have a general meeting without your treasurer's report. Okay, general business. So general business are the motions that are on the agenda. Now, a motion on the agenda might be like the one we talked about earlier, which was to do with the quiz night. So that's general business. Anything that is not on the agenda is not a priority. If there are financial motions, mandatory notice is required. So that is 7 days for a general meeting and 48 hours for an executive meeting. And there can also be discussion items on there. Now, I know a lot of P&Cs do this, where they have a discussion item on as under general business. That's great. And what can happen there is that that discussion item can actually lead to a motion, and then that motion can lead to a resolution. So you have a vote on it. Be very mindful of time when it comes to discussion items, because they can consume a lot of time, and it is up to the secretary to keep reminding or prompting the chair of the meeting, we're running out of time, or we need to get this thing moving along a bit. Then, of course, we have other business. Now, other business is that business that came to the secretary at the beginning of the meeting, or someone wants to raise it at the end. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Just be careful with other business, because sometimes it's something that someone is going to bring up because it's a personal bee in their bonnet. It's an item that maybe they're only concerned with. It might be an item which actually causes consternation or within the P&C. And it might be a disruptive item. But then again, it might be a great item. But we do have a set time limit for our meetings, as we mentioned earlier. So that's a good time for the chair to actually state, okay, we don't have time for that now. We'll talk to you about it after the meeting. We'll pop it on the agenda for the next meeting. And if you use that type of wording, it conditions people to learn that the agenda is really, really important, and whatever is on that agenda that goes out before the meeting is priority. You then set your date of your next meeting, and then you close the meeting and record the time that the meeting has closed as well. I will just go back and reaffirm the need to have a finished time for your meeting. So you're always referring to that finished time. You're always working towards that finished time. Yes, if something's really, really important and the P&C votes to extend the meeting time, that's fine. But please be aware of your quorum during that time as well. Okay, so more details on the duties of the P&C Secretary. So that part was about the meetings. And what we're going to do now is just go in and touch on some of those duties a little bit more. So dealing with your correspondence. So we mentioned correspondence is part of the meeting agenda. So you as a secretary will need to deal with correspondence. So correspondence, as I mentioned earlier, is external communication. Usually it's by post or it's by email. So the job of the secretary is to open that mail, receive that mail. Now, it might go to a post office box, or it might go to the school, and the school allows the P&C to have a pigeonhole at the school, and you go and collect it. Please collect it on a weekly basis. Don't let it mount up. You will get it, and then you will distribute it. Now, if something's mentioned, something's written on it private and confidential, you don't open it as a secretary. If it doesn't have private and confidential on it, then you open it as a secretary. And you will get things like bank statements, and you will distribute that to the correct person, and you will log where it's gone to. So that will go to the treasurer, of course. And then obviously that log then goes to the agenda for the next meeting. You may have to write letters or communiques as well. So you might have to write emails, you might have to write formal letters. That's part of the job of the secretary. If you do have issues with that, there's no problem to call the office, contact the office, and have a chat to Jonathan. Jonathan is our communications and research officer, and that's his bread and butter. That's his job. That's what he does for a living. So if you want some hints and tips on that, you're more than welcome to contact Jonathan. He'll be more than happy to speak to you. And under the Constitution, any of that correspondence needs to be kept for 12 months. Of course, if it's ongoing business, that you're going to continually deal with over a number of years, you need to keep it longer than 12 months. But anything else, keep for 12 months, and then you can shred it after that. You don't need to keep it anymore. Now, bank statements, of course, well, the Treasurer is going to keep that, and that's a financial record, so that needs to be kept for 7 years. You'll also need to take minutes. So back at the meeting, we did mention taking minutes, but this is it in a little bit more detail. Take as many notes as you think required. I've been a secretary before of P&C, also of a cricket club, and I took lots of notes. But that's not what actually ended up on my minutes. My notes were for my own reference. So when the minutes come out, they're actually quite brief. So your minutes are recording the outcomes, the decisions made, who is taking action, and who has responsibilities. Please, on your minutes, don't put opinions, don't put discussions, unless someone specifically asks for what they have, what they are saying to be recorded verbatim within the minutes. Okay. If you put something in the minutes where you said someone said something, you can bet that they are going to contest it and say, I did not say that. They might have said it, but we do know that people back down and they don't want to, they basically don't want to confirm that that is what they said. And then sometimes, and I haven't heard it with P&Cs, but I do know it's happened with associations, legal action has resulted from it. So please do not put opinions and discussions within the minutes. You are recording outcomes only, actions and responsibilities. And it's a great idea to code your resolutions. So each resolution that is made has a specific code. So this one here, and this is a code we've just made up. You don't have to use this code. But what it helps, or what this helps, is that if you are spending money or you are taking action on this, your financial documents can also contain this code. So you can link whatever finance happens or whatever spending takes place or whatever money comes into the P&C, you can link it to a decision that's made at a meeting that is recorded in the minutes. So FR means financial resolution, number 9, at the second meeting of 2019. That's our code. You can make your own code up. So here's an example of how it would look. Now, it's a good idea for P&C to actually have a status list of their P&C resolutions. So you can see where those resolutions are at. And not only that, this is my favorite bit of this, it's got who is responsible for it, who is taking action, who's the person who's accountable for doing the job. So it's got the date, where the resolution was made. It's got the resolution number. I just referred to that. And I would, if it was a financial resolution, put FR in front of it. Financial resolution, you're giving it a code so that you can match it to your spending or your income. And you write down what the details are, what the actual resolution is, whether it's complete or whether it's not complete yet, which is ongoing, and then any comments after that as well. This document here is downloadable from our website under the resources section of our website. And it's a really, really handy document to have. We use it for our state council meetings. It's a great way for people to be updated on the status of those resolutions, where they're at. And also, this part here, what I'm responsible for, what I have to get my butt into gear and get done. Right, so once you've taken your minutes, you'll need to get a draft out. And hopefully I don't scare you there by writing 2 days, but that's what we recommend. The draft is out within 2 days, and it is a draft. So the draft of the minutes goes only to the membership of the P&C. Once it goes to the next meeting and it's ratified, it's signed off, it's approved by the P&C, then you can send it out to whoever, the school community. But up to that point in time, it only belongs to the membership because it's a draft. First, it goes to the chair of the meeting. And I haven't written president there because they are not necessarily the chair. Some P&Cs might have somebody else sit in the chair. Most obviously have the president there, but some P&Cs might have someone else sitting in the chair. You get the chair of that particular meeting to check it, and then it gets sent out. So sent to membership, they are draft minutes, and after they are confirmed or ratified, then you put them out to the school. All right, so some record keeping that you need to know about in terms of the P&C, in terms of those records that you have as a secretary. Minutes, they need to be kept in perpetuity under the Constitution. That means you keep them forever. They're archived. We do recommend you hold both a hard copy and you hold a copy, a soft copy, a digital copy, or a cloud copy of them as well. Register of members, you need to keep that. That's a requirement under legislation. The AIA 2015 means Associations and Corporations Act 2015. Record of office holders as well. Now with us, that form that I showed earlier on, they're both on the same form. And that's a requirement too under legislation. You need to keep all those in perpetuity. So all those are kept in perpetuity. Correspondence, 12 months. Membership forms and executive committee nomination forms, well, you will keep them up to the next AGM, and then you can shred them, because at the next AGM you get new ones. And it's a job of the secretary under the Associations and Corporations Act now and under the Constitution to make sure that any documents that you have, once you've finished your tenure, once you've finished your job as a P&C secretary, is you return those documents to the executive as soon as you possibly can. And now, because I think there's been lots of problems in the past, now Department of Mines, Industry Regulation and Safety, who oversee associations like P&Cs, have implemented fines for non-return of documents. Won't go into any further into that, but they have done that because there have obviously been serious infringements by associations. So basically, get those documents back as soon as you possibly can. The other thing you'll need to do as a P&C secretary is you'll need to notify your principal and WACSSO of your office bearers, executive committee members. And you need to do that by the 30th of April every single year. It doesn't matter when your AGM is. The Constitution states the 30th of April. If you go to our website and you go to the tab at the top that says resources, and then you have a look down the left-hand side and it'll pop up and it will say update your P&C details. And then you'll come to this form. You fill out that form, that comes through to us, and we put that in our database. And we've also sometimes got survey questions in there that we actually keep records of what's going on with P&Cs, and that helps us deliver accurate services to you. So that is part of the job of the secretary, to fill that form out. I can say to you, please don't start that form until you have all the information required. Okay, this is our last slide, but it's a very, very important job or role that the secretary has, and that is a signatory to the accounts of the P&C. So you have four main signatories, which is your treasurer, your secretary, your vice president, and your president. You can have one other that's elected from the executive, but the job of the secretary, as soon as you sign up to be secretary, you're also a signatory to account. So you may be asked to do transactions online, electronic funds transfer transactions from bank accounts. You may actually be asked to sign checks. And it's part of the job that you do. The job of signatory, the secretary can delegate certain jobs to other people as long as it's minuted. They may not delegate the role of the signatory to anybody else. That is the only role that they cannot really delegate. If you have a check or a payment made out to you because it's a reimbursement, avoid any potential conflict of interest there. Do not be a signatory for that payment. That's common sense, really. And if you're in a direct relationship with someone that is a family relationship or a business relationship, and they are on the P&C, and they're an office bearer or an executive committee member that can sign, please do not sign with them. Don't co-sign the same transaction. You can sign other transactions, but not with that person. Okay, it is 7:55, and we have gone through to the last slide. So now, some questions.